Hello, hope you're all doing well and enjoying the class so far in the semester. I hope everything's going well for you and that you're able to follow along with us okay. And again, please, anything comes up as a question or anything you'd like to hear more about or ask some questions, please do let me know by email or phone call and I'll be happy to talk that over with you. Today we're looking at Chapter 6 of Logical Proofs, Chapter 6 of 1 Hour Strategy, covering area of logical proofing your ideas. I'm going to say this right here, and I believe it fully. If you can grasp this chapter, if you can do what this example is all about, follow this process of logical proofing your big ideas, you're going to be light years ahead in your career and learn something early on that you won't have to learn later on in order to be very effective at anything you intend to write. I know it's a big statement, but I really believe that this can actually transform your career and your ability to do quality work in this little section we're going to talk about today. Let's remember, call up the slides on this so you can have a look at the slides while we're going through this, and we'll start out with a recap on the 1 hour on the process. Basically, you can see that what we're doing here when we're going through this book and through these chapters is to follow the strategy building process. All business is strategy related. When you're going to do a entrepreneurship thing or even expand on something you're already doing, but it's strategically oriented and making strategic decisions. So you need a strategy development process. Now this really does work through. By the time we're finished with these next few steps, you really have a process in hand where you can develop strategy that's effective for whatever you want to do, whether it's a new business, old business, or a tweak or a little bit change to something you're already doing. So that's what this idea is. And right now you can see we are into the fifth step of this process. So we go to the next, which is how to ensure your soundness of your ideas. Remember, last class we looked at how to generate ideas, before that how to generate your goals. And again, it's a process. You have your goals, they lead to ideas, how to accomplish those goals. And once you have a bunch of ideas, you have to figure out which of these ideas will work. Which of these ideas can create traction and be implemented. And so that's what this is all about. How do you figure out which of your ideas make sense and can be developed further into action steps, which we'll look at next time. Okay, so then we look at Chapter 3. Now Slide 3. Slide 3 on logical proofs. What I really want to say here is that there's a great deal of power in a written word in a business setting. One thing I saw early in my career was there are people like to talk. People talk a lot, and maybe people like that, or maybe you find yourself sometimes being that way yourself. You see an issue and you talk about it, but you don't do anything about it. And in business that happens all the time. People complain, they moan, they say this, they see the issue, and then they just leave it right there. And I found very early in my career that people were very open to, if you see something, write it up, create a background and a situation, and then write up a conclusion and a solution for that. And then take it around to the people that are sign off on things like that in the hierarchy, and you get stuff done, and you get policy done. And I found that people like to talk a lot more than they like to actually do. And if you can just convert yourself to something rather than just talk about that and leave it, to actually do something. I mean, how many of you had these great ideas? I'm sure we all have, and you don't do anything about them, and it's almost worse than not having to do in the first place, because you've let everybody down by not implementing that idea. So again, the deal in business is see a problem, come with an idea to fix it, and then get it done so you can get it approved, and that changes things. Remember, in business, there are tons of problems, and management has not that many solutions. You always wonder, why doesn't my manager do something? Why isn't this happening? How come I don't see this being fixed? There are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is there's just so many of them, and people are very, like we said before, they're very apt to point out, well, that isn't working very well, but how about fix it? You always hear things, I want solutions, not problems, but it's true. There are tons of problems, so be a solution provider, and that comes through having ideas. And you'll get noticed. And in business, if you're a person that comes through, makes a decision, and helps people get ahead, that's very much noticed. Now, I want to talk a little bit about writing, is that a lot of times people say something, oh, that was well written, or that was poorly written, didn't really get it, I got it. that person is a good writer, this person is not a good writer. And I really want to say something here in that, I worked for banks, I worked for companies where almost the majority of people were not native English speakers, even though the language of the corporation was English. So you'd get all sorts of memos and emails and everything from people that were maybe English was their second, third, or fourth language, and of course it wasn't well written sometimes, and maybe there were grammatical mistakes or a lot of things. However, it was a lot different from saying it was bad writing, and so through looking at that, and what I want you to think of is that writing is either logical or illogical. Writing's either logical or illogical. If it's logical, it's good. If it's illogical, it's bad. Therefore, logical writing is good writing. Illogical writing is bad writing. And that takes a huge pressure off many of us who may not be that fluent in a certain language. I worked a long time in Brazil, and I can speak Portuguese, but writing Portuguese, I have to say, it's quite a bit further down. However, you can write logically, it's fine. People will overlook the mistakes you make as long as your logic is clean. You'll still be a good writer. When I was in college, my writing wasn't so good, and it took me a long time to figure out why that was. And I really looked at this a lot. And again, that's why I've come to this chapter where we're talking about now, where I really believe that you can be a very effective writer, and that can tremendously affect your career. Again, writing is not bad or good. It's either logical or illogical, and that's the whole key. And what we're going to look at today is a way to take your ideas and make sure that they're logical, and make sure that, and therefore they will be good writing. Remember, when you're in business, your point is to win. Your point is to get people to agree with what you're saying, whether it's a recommendation, an idea, or solution, or a strategy, that what you're saying, what you want to putting forth carries the day. You want to research, of course, and be right, but you want to have a way that once you have a solution, that it wins the day. Now, I really encourage you to read the chapter on this in the book, but we'll go through this a bit right now. On slide 4, you're going to see that one of the key elements of business work, and when you're looking at your entrepreneurship concepts, and later on when we do our project, you're looking at things like what's wrong. And a lot of times your motivation for building a business is seeing something that's wrong. We talked about increasing capabilities. That's true. But a lot of things like that, you say, I want to increase that capability. I'm going to empower more people. I want to do more things. I see something that's flat out wrong, and I want to address it. And you might think, what am I seeing that no one else is seeing? What's not working? Where do I want to be versus where I am? Remember, a key thing in business, and you'll see how you can look at it different ways, as budget, annual business, etc. But it's the difference between where I am and where I wanted to be. I wanted to sell this many, we only sold this many. We wanted to expand here, we only expanded here. What do I have? What did I want to have at this time of the year, or this fiscal year, whatever? How far did we get? How far did I want to go? So these are all the kind of things that show, and those are really highlight what's wrong. So, for example, say you wanted to sell 250,000 pair of sneakers in Detroit of a certain kind, and you sold 150,000. I wanted to sell 250. We sold 150. What's the gap? What's the problem? What's the issue? What's wrong is that we're $100,000 short. 100,000 units short. So from there, you see, once you've identified the gap, then you can figure out, how do I fix it? Again, you need to see where you want to be, where you are, what that gap is, and that is what's wrong, what's happening, what you need to fix, what you need to address, and what you need to come up with a solution for, and that identifies that. In business, usually quite clear, but it could be something like we wanted to open 3 branches, we only opened 1, or we wanted to do this, we wanted to do it in 6 months, it's taken us 12. But all those differences of where you wanted to be and where you are the gap in business that needs a solution to be driven, hopefully by you. So, okay, once you've got the gap you identified, you have to ask yourself some questions. Why did this happen? And it's pretty easy. What created the gap? Why didn't we sell? Why didn't we grow? Why didn't we do what we thought we were going to do? And it can be very clear why that happened. Sometimes it's a little more unclear, but then you have to look into it. And then you have a question, should I leave things alone? Sometimes, it's like, say your gap, you wanted to sell 250,000 of these sneakers, and you sold 235. The gap is very small. It's not that big of a deal. Leave it alone. Or maybe you figure out that the gap is so big that it's maybe we should need to redirect our whole business. But the point is that once you see that gap, one of the legitimate questions is, should I just leave it? Is it worth fixing? Sometimes on a cost-benefit side, on a risk-reward side, it's not worth fixing. You don't want to spend a whole bunch of money fixing something that is the gap is there, but it's not worth fixing because the benefit of fixing it wouldn't add much to your bottom line. Okay, so then should I do what it takes to close the gap? All right, so you determine, yeah, we should do that. And then what should I do to close the gap? These are your solutions, your ideas, your recommendations, your strategy of figuring out a way to fix that issue that you've seen. And then how should I close the gap? So you basically, and those are how you generate ideas. By thinking, and then you see on the slide there, your goals are come from the gap. Your ideas come from, am I going to fix it? Should I fix it? Okay, I'm going to fix it. Then your ideas come up. So we looked at the last thing last week on last lecture, sorry, on idea generation. So you have these ideas, and we, there are a lot of different idea generation things that I like to work with. But basically, you look at what we talked about last time, and you come up with your ideas, and then you develop. So basically, what you're going to do is go from your gap to your goal to some ideas, right? Okay, and then you're at the point where, how do I know if this idea is going to work, or if this idea is a good one, or if these series of ideas have merit? This is really important. Okay, now this is the crux of what I'm going to talk about right now. When you have an idea, a solution, a proposition, a recommendation, or you say anything whatsoever to try to convince, to make a statement of any kind, there are 6 questions people can ask. You might think, oh, that's never. It's true. Sometimes people think there are only real 3, but I believe that there are 6, especially in business. You need to address it. Now, sometimes you might say, well, I don't ask those questions. Well, actually you do. You just don't think you do, or you don't remember doing it, or it's subconscious. And a lot of times you'll see people that you're saying something and people are glossing over, they're not agreeing with you, and that's because they're asking those questions internally, or maybe they're very conscious of those questions and you haven't addressed them and fixed them. So basically, what we're going to look at today is what do those 6 questions mean, and how can I make sure that they're addressed properly? This is really important. These are the only questions that can be asked when you make a statement. Therefore, if you resolve those issues and resolve those questions, you win your day. It's that simple. Okay? Again, the questions are why? Why should we do what we intended, our solution? How? How do we implement our solution, our idea, recommendation? How do you know it'll work? How do you know that this recommended solution that you propose will work? Then who, and I'm going to emphasize this because people often, even when I say it a bunch of times, and whenever a test comes up, people usually, 50% of the time get this wrong. Who means the person driving the solution. Remember, this is key. In business, if you don't have a person that's running the thing and driving the solution, it probably won't happen. And even if you don't have someone that you can really allocate towards any solution or problem or recommendation or strategy, it's best not to do it. Letting something, so we'll work it out, or maybe we'll divide this responsibility, etc., that doesn't work in business. You need a person who's responsible, in charge, and who takes ownership of that issue. They're accountable, and they're running with it. Who means who specifically is going to do this. Remember, if you have the idea and the solution, it can often be you're the one that is chosen to manage the situation, make it happen. When is simple. When do we expect this solution, idea, recommendation, etc., to be implemented? When? At a specific date. Sometimes you can slip on the date, but if you don't have a date, you'll always slip. So, having a date, you can always blow by it. You can make a mistake. You can say, hey, we didn't make our deadline for the following reasons, but at least you have that in place. And finally, what will happen? What will happen in business turns out to be like your budget, your things that occur, like it's your volume, it's your numerical response, or your way your balance sheet grows, your income statement grows, how many you do, whatever, as a result of your strategy or your idea recommendation. And this is important for the following reason. When you're in business, everything you do is going to cost money and take resources and allocation of time and everything. So you have to have what will happen. You have to say, if we do all this, this is going to be what happens. And it has to be big. It has to be worth the effort. At the same time, if you have a super good idea, really nice idea, it makes perfect sense, it can be done. At the end of the day, it makes you very little money, skip it. Because even though it's a great idea, it doesn't have the value of your time, etc. You want to work on stuff in your career. It makes a big difference, has a big impact and is worth your time. So you want to do on what will happen, make sure it's there. And it's really important to get that right, because that's how you can convince people to allocate you the resources you need to do your strategy, is by showing the size and volume and the impact of what your solution or goal is all about. All right? Okay, you got it. Now here's how it works. Logical proof. This is how it works. When you come up, remember, you're going from your gap to your goals, to your ideas to attain those goals. So when you have those goals, when you have those ideas, you take this logical proof tracking sheet, which you see on the last slide, on slide 6, and you just use this. I use this all the time. I use this every time I'm doing a consulting project. I end up with this, because once we get through, whether it's an individual business line or a whole new business or something they're already doing, you want to get to the point where you have these ideas. So you get these ideas, and so you take your first thing is to put the idea in the left-hand column. That's your idea. And then you go to why. Now the why is usually pretty simple, because your why is, we want to do this in order to address and reach the goal. That's why. We think we want to ensure that we open 2 more restaurants and whatever, because we wanted to open 5, we only open 2, or because we think that's going to give us a scale to reach a certain monetary target, etc. Anyway, the why is usually pretty easy, because it's directly focused on attaining the goal. So then you get the how. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do this? What will be required to implement that solution, that idea? How will we do it? We need to hire this, we need to grow this, we need to increase the size of this, we need to move there, move here, we need to reduce that, add that, come up with a new technology, find a new source of supply, whatever it happens to be. How are you going to do that? And again, it can be something like, again, using a simple example, we only make 200 t-shirts a month in our factory. We've had a demand is far greater than we thought. Now we need to make 400. Okay, why? Because we want to attain we want to get the money from that demand and satisfy demand. How? We need to build 2 more assembly lines or whatever it happens to be that will produce that. So the why, the how are pretty easy. Now, the how do you know is the hardest one. It's difficult. The how do you know is like somebody says, well, how do you know it's going to work? And you have to research this, because this is where most people fail when it comes to making a recommendation, strategy, or an idea or solution. They haven't thought out how do you know it's going to work. This is where you get your proof, your research. You go back and figure out, because other people have done this, because when we tried it here, it worked, because when we had that, whatever it takes, you have to satisfy that. If you cannot satisfy the how do you know it will work, you cannot go forward in your recommendation, because you will have a hole in your argument, and it will be found, and you will lose the day because of that. Take the time, the effort, whatever is necessary to nail down your how do you know. And really, that's the thing. Like, you see a lot of times when people just talk, they'll say things, and you'll think, that doesn't sound right. And what you're really saying is that, I get why you're saying that, but I don't know how that's going to work. And so you say to them, well, how do you know that'll work? Because I said, whatever. They'll start going emotional. You don't want to do that in business. You want to say facts. So I know it'll work because of this. We've done this study. I'm referring to that. We have this. We have the measurements here. We have an example here. Our competitors do this. All these kind of things will go into the how do you know. Really important to get that right. I know I'm stressing it. It needs to be stressed. Then the who. Okay, this has to be a person that's going to run it and going to be accountable, that's going to manage it, that's going to be own that process. Joe, so-and-so is running this. Fine. When do you expect that'll happen? 4th quarter of this year, next year, 2 weeks from now, whatever happens to be, a date. What will happen? Again, we'll go back to this. If we do this, what will be the financial result? If we do this, how many more will we do? If we do this, what will happen to our competition? If we do this, so all the things that will be the result, you have to put down there. And that's where you really empower your argument. At the same time, like I said before, if it's not worth doing, don't do it. But that way you can say, this is what we do, and it's going to have this impact. If you're, again, go back, say the t-shirt example, and somebody says, well, you know what, let's make polo shirts. Okay, it's not that big of a jump from a t-shirt to polo shirt, I assume. So yeah, how do you know it's going to work? Okay, you figure that out. And then what will happen? You just multiply how many polo shirts you make times how much the value minus the cost. You say, we're going to make X amount of net revenue or net income if we do that. Okay, that's good. That way you get your boss or the management to decide in your favor. Again, everything has a cost. Everything is an allocation of resources. So you have to make sure that you're competitive when you're competing against other resources in the company, that what will happen is worth it. All right? And then finally, done. Done is a simple yes or no. I don't like to see things that it's half done, it's three-quarters, we're almost there. That's kind of a drag in business because it may never happen. So you want to say things that are do we do it or we didn't? We have this idea, we know why, we know how, etc. And now and who's going to do it? When it'll happen? Result, and is it done? Yes or no? So that's the simple way to do that. Again, listen to this a couple times or think it through. Look at that, and I really want you to try to use it. These are in every of these lectures on this book. We have tools, and the tools are there to use. Keep them, use them, and I'm going to say this again. If you learn how to do this in every single thing you write, whether it's a small memo or a long memo or like a major, competitive thing for obtaining a grant from the government, who knows? This is what people are looking for. They're looking for the idea to fix it, to attain a goal. Why do it? How do you do it? How do you know it's going to work? Who, when, and what's going to be the result? That's what it's all about. If you can always write in this format, always be thinking of resolving this, and understand that every single time you say something, that's what your audience is thinking, then you can be really effective much earlier than I was in business. All right, hope that helps. Thanks a lot. Bye.